Hi, welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and we are looking at July 20th today, and it is raining. It is raining and wet and cool, 67 degrees Fahrenheit right now. And even though the garden is loving that we're getting rain, sometimes it's a little bit too much rain. So we've had a little bit of some yellowing on our potatoes. Hopefully we have potatoes made already because they've already bloomed and gone. These are the Kennebec potatoes, and then we have the Yukon Gold potatoes as well. But we do have loads and loads of tomatoes that are sitting on the vines, and they are getting quite big. I had one that had contracted blossom end rot, and I don't know if it's just because it was so wet or what, but I did go ahead and cut it off and give it a toss. It was right here. But the rest of the tomatoes that are on the vine, they all seem just fine. I haven't seen any blossom end rot on them. You can see one of them is quite large here, and all of them look perfectly fine. So we'll keep feeding them and hoping that that's not the case, that we'll have continued ones. That's actually the Jubilee tomato. So that's the only one that's shown up with the blossom end rot. The rest of them all look fantastic. This is the Cherokee purple. You can see they're nice and pretty. No blossom end rot on those. And then we have our red pear tomatoes over here, all looking fantastic. And we have clusters and clusters of these tomatoes. Look at that. There's 3 clusters right there. Another cluster here, 4. Another one, 5. Another one, 6. And we're starting another cluster up here, 7. And more blooms here. Looks like there's going to be another cluster right there. Just keeps on going. And it'll continue to go through the whole season because it's an indeterminate tomato. We're also having wind here today. So you can see the wind blowing. Lots of rain going on. So we had to pause it for just a moment. I have my grandson come out here. We are making supper right now. I'm just letting the soup heat up. I made the last Tahitian squash from last season today. And we're going to have some Tahitian squash soup and brown butter chicken with all kinds of herbs in it, and rice and a salad fresh out of the garden. So lots of my different lettuces. Anyway, loads and loads of tomatoes out here, and I wanted to show you the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens tomatoes that I went and picked up. They had free tomatoes that were out there, and I picked up 4 Amish paste tomatoes, and then I think there was 4, just 4 rainbow blend tomatoes. So we don't know exactly what those tomatoes are going to be until they start producing, but they are growing like crazy. They have just decided to take off, and I've got a couple of blooms popping up on them, and one of them looks like it has a broader leaf than the rest. That's this one down here. So I'm thinking that's going to be some sort of German tomato possibly, because I've noticed a lot of those have more broad leaves. I don't know though. I've got some Rutgers here. You can see this Rutgers here is some really huge leaves, and this is the same tomato here. Rutgers here, Rutgers here, Rutgers here, and those tomato leaves are not quite that big, but when you get out here on the end, I have a Rutgers out here, and this one does have broader leaves as well. Not quite as broad as that one over there, but I'm not sure why its leaves are so big. Maybe I just hit it with a little bit more organic fertilizer than the rest of the containers, because you never know exactly how much you're putting in. You try to put the same, but I just pour it. I don't really measure it. But anyway, loads and loads of tomatoes sitting. I've been counting the clusters. There've just been so many that I can't keep up with it. I did move my hibiscus over here because they were not getting enough sun on the other side, so I moved them over here, and they immediately popped out a huge bunch of leaves and some new blooms, and that just moved them yesterday. I've got a sunflower just about ready to bloom, and looks like it's going to be yellow. That was supposed to have been a couple of varieties in there, but I'm not sure which one was the white ones, which ones are the red ones, and which ones are the yellow ones, but that one looks like it's going to be yellow. So we have that one in there. We've got loads and loads of squash coming up. So you can see one of my yellow straight neck squash sticking out there. We've also got butterdish squash. That was one of the seeds that came up in one of the containers and I moved it out to the garden, and it is looking like it's going to be a butter dish squash. And our garden towers are still doing amazing. I have harvested loads and loads of flower seeds, lots of my pansy seeds and viola seeds, and my petunia seeds I've harvested already, and I will continue to harvest them throughout the season. I hope that you're not hearing the wind too much, because it doesn't seem to be making a whole lot of noise, it's just blowing. And still producing loads and loads of strawberries in here, still getting strawberries by the pints every day, every other day. And at this point, I've lost count. After I got past 2 gallons of strawberries, I'm like, nope, we just have too many to try to keep up with. Tomatillos are popping up like crazy as well. We've got jack-o'-lanterns that are setting on the vines. This must be 2 Gigante Verde Salsa tomatillos, because they have not really started producing. I've noticed 1 tomatillo so far, and they just seem to be getting bigger and taller and have really big leaves in comparison with the other tomatillos that I have. So I think these are 2 of the Gigante, which I'm happy with. Loads and loads of blooms, and they are starting to produce a few. So hopefully we'll get lots of those. Like I said, tomatoes like crazy. And I did plant a lot of tomatoes. I have over 100 plants. And our San Marzanos are coming up by clusters now. Look at that. Way better than last season, even though it was way warmer last season. They are doing so much better this season. I'm not real sure why. So kind of surprising. And we've got peppers finally showing up like crazy on our plants, even though it's cool and wet. Look at all these tomatoes. Black Prince tomatoes, Rutgers tomatoes. At this point, there's just so many. We've got big beef tomatoes. Look at that. We got super sauce tomatoes. Just goes and goes. And these eggplants are really getting a lot bigger now. And they were pretty small before. Still got a few that are small that were really tiny. And they're starting to come on now. And it's funny because this one looks entirely different. Much lighter color than the rest of these. The rest of these all have some purple on them, and this one doesn't. Interesting. And a little tiny one still left there. But the rest of these are really starting to put on some size. So are our cantaloupes varieties in here. They're finally starting to put on some runners and things. Our herb garden is still doing fantastic. Our celery is starting to get really big in here. Getting to the point where we can actually harvest a few stalks. Of course, in the garden, the main garden, they're a lot bigger. Just all kinds of stuff going on in here. Our cantaloupes are blooming over here. So I look for them to start setting cantaloupes soon. Cucumbers spreading like crazy. So are these over here. This is the new garden bed. We planted some more peas in here. I extended it out. We've got some beans also planted. The beans are just now starting to kind of pop up. And then we've got some squash in here that still hasn't came up yet. That'll be probably a few more days when it heats up a little bit. We're supposed to be in the 90s in a couple of days. But look at those cucumbers, how much they have grown. These are parade cucumbers. I had forgotten that I planted those in here. So parade, and then I have straight 8 cucumbers and white spine cucumbers. There's just all kinds of different cucumber varieties in here. They'll all probably start producing at about the same time. There's some burpees picklers in here. And then we've got 3 cabbage plants that I just planted in here a couple days ago. And they are already starting to put on some new leaves. Again, I got those as well as the tomatoes at the Cheyenne Botanic Gardens all at the same time. And I wanted to show you an update on my other cabbages in the main garden, because I got some they're Mammoth Red Rock cabbages. They're supposed to be a really huge variety of cabbage. They get anywhere over 9 pounds, but typically can be 12 pounds or more. And I want to show you the heads on those. We'll just meander through the garden. You can kind of ASMR it, I guess. Just all kinds of things going on. Look at the corn tasseling right now. Getting silks on. So hopefully in the next couple of days when it dries off, we'll have lots of pollen from these corn, and they will go ahead and pollinate those silks. See that? Looks like we're going to do the same thing we did last season with 2 or more on the stalks. So I did save the seed from those last season, and it seems that that carried over to this season. So I may have started something, which will be a surprise. So all of our tomatoes over here doing fantastic as well. These are the lemon boys, some of the extra super sauces that I had, some black cherry, Tiny Tims, all kinds of stuff over here. They're all putting on now, and so are my eggplants over here. These are the bigger eggplants. They are starting to bloom and starting to produce, so that's going to be fantastic. Then I have 2 containers of parade cucumbers over here. Last week they were teeny tiny. Look at them this week, starting to put on runners. And this is a super sauce tomato over here, and it's starting to bloom and set fruit already. And it was tiny just a couple of weeks ago. Then we have big tomatillo over here, starting to set some tomatillos on it. And then we have 2, I believe, black cherry tomatoes over here. And they are in clusters all over these vines. These are my grandson's containers. Look at the tomatoes, if you can see those, popping up everywhere. And we do have a little bit of some sunburn on the leaves, which we will trim off. Make sure these stay healthy. So all kinds of stuff going on over here. And we are starting to lightning and thunder again, so I may have to go inside. So we'll look at those cabbages another time. So like, subscribe, notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. We'll see you in the next one.